The judicial system of Sweden consists of the law of Sweden and a number of government agencies tasked with upholding security and rule of law within the country. The activities of these agencies include police and law enforcement, prosecution, courts, and prisons and other correctional services. The courts are divided into two parallel and separate systems: the general courts for criminal and civil cases, and general administrative courts for cases relating to disputes between private persons and the authorities. Each of these systems has 3 levels. Leave to appeal can be required for a review at the second and third level. There are also special courts and tribunals that hear specific cases. The general courts deal with criminal cases, like an act defined in the Swedish Penal Code or in another law, for which a sanction is prescribed. The general courts also handle some civil law disputes. For example, disputes over the contents of a business agreement or cases relating to family law, and a number of other non-contentious matters, such as adoption and appointment of legal guardians. Proceedings are generally open to the public, but access can be restricted, for example in cases about sexual offenses. The general administrative courts handle numerous types of cases relating to disputes between private persons and the authorities. Over 500 different kinds of cases are assigned to the general administrative courts, like appeals against decisions made by the Swedish Tax Agency or the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. There are also a number of special courts, which will hear a narrower set of cases, as set down by legislation. These special courts has a narrow jurisdiction as defined by special laws. For example, the law about land and environmental courts, less than, ref greater than some of these courts are operated as divisions within courts of the general or general administrative courts. The special courts usually determine cases at the lowest level of the court system or at the first appeal level of the court system. A number of authorities are also very similar to special courts in the way they operate. Sweden has a penal law system and a civil law system with laws created by the Parliament of Sweden. However, Sweden also has an extensive system of administrative law. The Swedish internal law is by law subject to EU law, international law and the European Convention on Human Rights. Sweden allows for the court's free evaluation of evidence, including hearsay evidence. The role of judicial review of legislation is generally not practiced by the courts. Instead, the Council on Legislation gives non-binding opinions on legality. Courts are not bound by precedent, although it can be influential. The Ministry of Justice, a cabinet-level department in the government of Sweden headed by the Minister of Justice. It is primarily concerned with legislation concerning the judiciary. The actual day-to-day administration of the courts is the responsibility of the national courts. Administration, less than, ref greater than after completing their legal education. Graduates may become judges, prosecutors, or private attorneys. The government is the principal employer of law school graduates. Judges start their career by applying to the governmental agency, the Ministry of Justice, who accepts about 30% of applicants. They begin their training as assistants and court clerks for about 2 years. And after candidates pass the appropriate test, are assigned to a district court. After a broad range of assignments that may last up to 8 years, the government determines appointments and promotion of judges to permanent positions. Appellate judges sometimes must wait until they have 20 years of experience before they are appointed. To be appointed as an appellate judge, a judge without governmental support must have the correct balance of good academic scores, solid research papers, several years of notable litigating practice at both district and appellate courts, and voluntary service as providing legal aid as well as guest faculty providing lectures at law schools. Appellate judges with governmental support may have considerable less experience, some with as little as only 1 year of court experience but with other experiences such as 2 decades as a personal secretary of a senior politician of the governing party at the time of appointment. Swedish prosecutors are lawyers who are employed by the governmental agency, the Swedish Prosecution Authority in court. The prosecutor is not necessarily in an adversarial relationship to the defendant, but is under an obligation to investigate and present information which is to the advantage of the defendant as well as to his or her disadvantage. He is not a member of the bench, nor does he participate in the private deliberations of the court. The prosecutor is also the only public official who can decide to appeal public prosecution cases. to courts of appeal. When a case has been decided by a court of appeal, the RAI